In this video, I'll be discussing the 5 critical questions that determine whether you can retire at any savings level and why the magic number myth keeps people working longer than they need to. Through working with clients across every income level, I've discovered that successful retirement isn't always about hitting that specific portfolio target. It's really about having clear answers to 5 fundamental questions that most people never properly address. And that's the reason for this video, to show you the questions that actually determine retirement readiness and how answering them eliminates the fear that keeps people trapped in careers that they would like to leave. So let's get right into it. One of the biggest reasons people stay in their careers longer than they need to has really had nothing to do with money itself. It has everything to do with a number that they've decided that they're supposed to hit. For some people, it's $1 million. For others, it's $2 million. And some people even tell me, Nick, I just want to get to that nice round target, something that feels safe. But here's the problem. Even though the amount that you've saved absolutely matters, it can also become a huge hang-up because the number on its own doesn't tell you the thing that actually determines retirement readiness. And I see this all the time. I've had people retire confidently with $500,000, and I've had people feel anxious with $4 million. Same country, same market, same rules, completely different outcomes. Why? Because retirement readiness has zero to do with hitting a magic number and has everything to do with whether your income reliably covers the lifestyle that you want to live. 2 different people can have the exact same portfolio size, but they give their answers to these 5 key questions differently, and you'll see how 2 completely different retirement realities kind of emerge. And that's why hitting this magic number and having that mindset is really dangerous. It keeps people focused on the wrong scoreboard. So instead of understanding their income needs, their fixed sources, their spending dynamics, maybe even their flexibility, instead of that, they stay glued to a savings target that might not even apply to them. And so what happens? Well, they delay their own retirement by years, not because they're not financially ready, but because they never stopped long enough to ask the right questions. And that's exactly why we're going to address those things in this video. And the very first question, and honestly, the one that most people skip, is this. So question number 1, what does it actually cost to live the lifestyle that you want in retirement? And you'd be amazed at how many people have never really answered that. Most folks guess at their retirement spending. They throw out a ballpark number, or they assume that it'll be less than it is today without ever tracking how much they actually spend right now. But once you dig in and you separate your essential expenses, so the things that you need, from your discretionary wants, so those things that make your life enjoyable, you start to see a realistic picture of your monthly lifestyle and what it's going to cost. And here's what most people forget. Your spending doesn't stay the same after you retire. Work-related costs go away. Commuting, lunches, clothes, and in many cases, those dollars shift towards things that you want to do more of in retirement, like travel, hobbies, family experiences, leisure. And when you answer this one question correctly or clearly for yourself, everything changes. So you convert a vague savings target, like, I think I need $1 million, into actual specific monthly income requirements. And that clarity is what gives and creates confidence, because the truth is, knowing that you need $8,000 a month gives you a real actionable planning target. But a $1.5 million portfolio doesn't do that. It's just a number until you know how your life actually is going to want to go, or the retirement that you're planning and how much it's going to cost, right? So once you understand your spending, you can finally see whether your current savings can support that lifestyle or whether you need to adjust something, maybe your spending, your timing, or maybe just even your income sources. But most importantly, being in touch with your spending, it eliminates the fear that comes from uncertainty. And it replaces the question, do I have enough, with something that's much more useful. And that is, does my income cover the lifestyle that I want? And for most people that we end up working with, the clarity to that question leads to a surprising realization, and that is that retirement is far more achievable and far closer than they ever thought. So, okay, getting in touch with your spending, it really clarifies your income needs. But the second question reveals how much stable income actually is going to reduce your dependence on your portfolio. Once you know what your lifestyle is going to cost you each month, you're going to ask that second question, which is how much of my essential spending is covered by stable, predictable income. And this is where people start to gain a lot of confidence because for most Americans, Social Security alone covers 30 to 50% of their retirement expenses. And that's a huge portion of your essentials that are already being supported before you ever touch your investments. So then you layer in your other stable sources. So maybe there's a pension. Maybe you have rental income. Maybe you've structured part of your plan with an annuity that creates a guaranteed floor. And all of these sources, they combine to lower the amount that you need to withdraw from your portfolio. And here's where you start to see some light through the forest. So when you calculate your stable income coverage, you start to discover that your portfolio doesn't need to replace as much of your entire lifestyle as you thought. So it only needs to bridge the gap between what you spend and what your stable income already covers. And this is why stable income can be more powerful than simply having an extra $500,000 sitting in your portfolio. Because when you have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month of predictable income coming in, Social Security, pensions, rentals, whatever, that income shows up every month, regardless of what the market is doing. It's not based on returns. It's not exposed to down years. It's not vulnerable to sequence of returns risk. So even if that stable income only covers 40 to 50% or maybe 60% of your essential needs, that percentage dramatically reduces the pressure that you place on your investments. And every dollar of essential spending that's covered by stable income is one less dollar that you're going to be forced to withdraw from your portfolio. And that's the key. You want to tally up and make the most of your stable sources of income. It's not that your essentials are automatically fully covered, right? It's that you know how much of your essentials are being covered through stable income so that you know what that remaining gap that your portfolio is that needs to bridge that gap. So that's clarity. Knowing your stable income percentage, right? It creates far more retirement security than simply chasing a bigger portfolio without maybe having a plan. And for most people, this calculation shows that retirement, it's more achievable than they expected many times because the portfolio doesn't have to do nearly as much heavy lifting as they had assumed. So now that you understand these first two questions, if you want a deeper look at how all of these pieces fit together, just click the link below in the description and you'll get access to my free training where I walk you through our full retirement optimization framework step by step. And while you're there, you can also download my Modern Guardrails Guide to Smart Retirement Spending. So that is a simple, practical breakdown of how you can set some spending guardrails that keep you confident, flexible, and on track throughout retirement without consistently worrying about overspending or underspending. So be sure to check that out. Now let's get back to the video. So stable income, right? It shows how much of your essentials are already supported. But the third question reveals the part that many people overlook, and that is your tax situation and how it determines how much of your money is going to actually be yours to spend after taxes. Because once you know your spending needs and you know how much of that is going to be covered by stable income, the next question is, question number 3, how much of my retirement income do I actually keep after taxes? Because this is something that people tend to gloss over. Most people, they focus on their gross income, what they can withdraw from their accounts. But retirement, it's lived on an after-tax basis, right? After-tax income. And those two numbers can be very different. So let's start with something simple. Traditional IRA withdrawals, they're taxed as ordinary income. So when you take out $5,000, you don't actually get to spend $5,000. You get whatever's left over after your tax bracket takes its share. And then you add Social Security. And that's where things become less simple because depending on your combined income, up to 85% of your Social Security can be taxable. So most people don't realize this until they're already retired, and then the surprise tax bill reduces their spending power. And without proper planning, tax planning, things like smart withdrawal sequencing and bracket management, the actual spending routinely ends up being 20 to 30% less than expected simply because taxes were never factored in. This is why understanding your tax situation is a foundational part of your next chapter. Two retirees can have the exact same portfolio size, but the one who planned their taxes well, they often end up with tens of thousands more spendable income every single year. And tax strategy can be that powerful. So when you're understanding your tax brackets, your Social Security taxation, your RMD timing, and your opportunities for maybe doing some Roth conversions during those low income years, you can start to position your income so that more of it ends up in your pocket, not the IRS's. And here's the part that people love hearing, right? Smart retirement tax planning can reduce lifetime taxes by hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. Because once you see your after-tax income clearly, the math becomes less about accumulation and a lot more about strategy. So tax planning maximizes how much income you get to keep. But the fourth question, it really tackles the one topic that everyone's afraid to think about, and that is covering healthcare before Medicare. Healthcare is the piece of retirement planning that creates the most anxiety. And honestly, it's usually because they assume the worst. But in reality, healthcare before you're 65, it shouldn't be a roadblock. It's really a planning question. And that question is, question number 4, if I retire before 65, how am I covering healthcare until Medicare starts? So retiring early creates a coverage gap, and how you fill it determines whether early retirement is financially realistic for you or not. You've got options. You've got COBRA, which is simple, but it can be more expensive. You've got marketplace plans, which can vary based on your income. You've got spousal coverage when it's available, right? It's often the best deal. And here's the part that people rarely hear. So when you retire and your income drops, you often become eligible for substantial ACA subsidies. It's not uncommon for a premium that would have been $1,800 a month to drop to like $400 to $600 simply because your taxable income is structured differently. And this is why so many people delay retirement unnecessarily, not because healthcare truly costs $2,000 a month, but because they never learned how subsidies actually work. The real cost, can range. It can be from $500 to $2,000 or more per month, depending upon the coverage level that you have in your income. And proper planning helps you to land far closer to the lower end. So when you understand subsidy thresholds and you're intentional about your income and where it comes from in those pre-65 years, you can dramatically reduce the premiums. And that's the point. Once you figure out and know your options and your numbers, the healthcare, it can be more manageable and it doesn't have to be a deal breaker. Question number 5 is the one that most people never think about until they're already retired. And I talk about this point a lot. And I think about this point a lot because the emotional cost for this can be really high. And the question is, what gives my life meaning when I'm no longer working? Because here's the truth. When the structure, the routine, and the purpose that come from your career suddenly vanish, a lot of retirees, they hit an unexpected wall. They don't miss the job, but they miss the identity that came with it. And this happens to people across all income levels. In fact, some of the most financially successful retirees are the ones who struggle the most because work was such a big part of how they define themselves. But this is where planning can make a big difference. If you think intentionally about what your days look like, what activities energize you, which relationships do you want to strengthen, and how do you want to contribute and stay engaged, you avoid the post-retirement drift that leads to unhappiness, depression, or a sense of aimlessness. And this isn't just emotional, it's also financial, because people who retire without a clear sense of purpose, they often overspend. So they start filling time with expensive distractions instead of meaningful experiences. And that's when Spending starts to creep up, not because they need more, but because they're just trying to feel something again. But retirees who enter this phase with intention, right, who know where their purpose comes from, they consistently report higher happiness levels regardless of their portfolio size. Purpose creates stability, it creates meaning, and it even creates better financial outcomes because your spending becomes aligned with things that actually bring you fulfillment. And that's why this fifth question matters just as much as the financial side of the plan. Retirement readiness isn't just about the numbers. It's about preparing your life, not just your accounts, for what's going to come next. And I like that saying, so I'm going to say it again. Prepare your life for retirement, not just your accounts. So now that you know all 5 questions, let's look at a holistic framework that integrates these questions into something actionable for you. Because everything we talked about really comes down to one thing: having a clear framework that connects these answers into a plan that makes sense for you. And here's how that framework works. It starts with precise spending clarity. So when you know exactly what your lifestyle costs, not a guess, not a rough estimate, but real numbers, that becomes the foundation for every other decision. From there, you calculate how much of those expenses are covered by stable income, Social Security, pensions, rentals, etc. And this shows you exactly how much your portfolio actually needs to provide each month. And it's almost always less than people expect. Then comes the part that separates a good plan from a great one, which is optimizing your tax strategy so that more of your income ends up in your pocket. Withdrawal sequencing, Roth conversions, bracket management, this is where your after-tax income gets maximized and your retirement timeline often moves closer than you thought. And after that, you integrate healthcare planning. So pre-65 coverage doesn't derail your goals. You just want to know your options, your potential subsidies, and what your income thresholds are going to be to keep that healthcare from becoming the monster that it's made out to be. And then you want to finish this framework with purpose planning, because a financially successful retirement without having a sense of meaning, it feels empty. And this step is what makes the emotional transition smooth rather than something that you scramble to figure out later. Remember, prepare your life for retirement, not just your accounts. So when you pull all 5 of these pieces together, something really powerful happens. The guesswork disappears. You stop asking, do I have enough? And you start seeing how your lifestyle, your income sources, your tax strategy, and your healthcare plan actually fit together. And that's why people who do this tend to be surprised when they go through this exercise, because 9 times out of 10, the answers show that retirement is far more achievable than they had feared. Because this framework, it works with any portfolio size. It aligns your resources with your real needs, not some arbitrary savings target. And for many people, it reveals something freeing. The portfolio that you have today may already support the retirement that you want once it's structured strategically. And if you want help applying these 5 questions to your own situation, your own income, and your own retirement timing, just click the link below. It's a free training and it walks you through step-by-step how to build a comprehensive retirement plan so you can retire with calmness and clarity. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.